Hey, it's Derek Applegate again with week number 6 of Mindset of Happiness and Joy. Today we're going to talk about, I call it realities. What is your reality? You know, we've been talking a lot this last few weeks about, the mindset of happiness and joy. And one of the highlights that I always want to point out to people is this sense of happiness or the sense of well-being is actually innate. It's something that's a part of you from the time that you were born. And there's a certain understanding that there's some implications with that, is kind of what I want to do. And I want to clarify is that when I do coaching, when I work with people, I very rarely give advice on what they should or shouldn't do. I personally don't believe that's my job. What I do and how I coach is mainly to point them to the fundamental truths or principles behind how you experience life. And if you understand the principles behind it, it actually gives you, it opens up to possibilities. The analogy that I used is, if I wanted to build, let's say, an airplane, and I decide, I want to make that airplane 100 feet long, but I only want to have wings that are like 4 feet wide, and I want to use an old Beetle engine to motor it. Now, everybody pretty much knows that that plane isn't going to fly. And the reason why that plane isn't going to fly is because short wingspan, the size of engine, it goes against the fundamental principles of aeronautics, which is lift and thrust. You need a certain amount of lift, so you need a certain amount of wingspan. You need also a certain amount of thrust or engine speed to be able to get that thing up on the ground. And the way to design a plane is to understand those principles. Well, in the same kind of a concept, when we have a misunderstanding of where our well-being is coming from, where happiness comes from, where we as human beings experience our life, and we don't understand the fundamental principles behind how that works. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to have awareness? What does it mean to have thought? If we don't understand those, then it's like trying to build an airplane with small wings and a crappy engine. It's just not going to take off. It's not going to get you where you want to go. But when you have an understanding, it opens up to the different possibilities, the different ideas, and there's a little place where you will figure out what to do. Your common sense, your wisdom will kick in and let you know what you want to do. But if you don't understand where your well-being comes from and the true source of your well-being, it's going to be kind of spinning a lot of your wheels. And a part of understanding that well-being is kind of also understanding where our realities are coming from. Now, in my my effortless relationship class, I tried to do this, and I'll do it again, but this is okay, there you go. Hope you can see that. But I'll ask you, what do you see? What do you see? I showed this to my class yesterday at the college, and everybody came up with a whole bunch of answers. They saw this white star. They saw a triangle. They saw a white triangle, a black triangle. They said they saw Pac-Mans and all the different things. But in reality, they're just lines. There is no star there. There is no triangle. There's just a couple of lines and a couple of dots. What our brain does is it fills in the blanks. We see something and our mind goes, well, what does that represent? And we fill in the blanks. Now, why is that important for us to know? Well, in the same concept, when we have something show up in our life, we're going to put meaning on that, and we're going to put judgment on that depending upon how our mind fills in the blanks. And how our mind fills in the blanks and what we think about that situation or that issue or whatever it is that you're dealing with, it's going to design your own reality. And every human being has their own reality. You can take 100 people and put them into a room and watch a movie, and the experience is the same, but how they determine whether or not it was an enjoyable movie or a good movie or a bad movie really comes down to their reality, how they perceived that. And conflict kind of comes when you think your reality is absolutely true and that the other person's reality is absolutely false. And when you understand a little bit more about, your reality is yours. It's just from your experience. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's a different reality. And that reality changes because the reality is designed by the principle of thought. Because we experience life via thought in the moment. And why that's important for you to know is that if you understand the illusionary nature of thought and the arbitrary nature of thought and how thought can just change really quick, then that your reality can change really quick. But understanding your well-being and where that well-being comes from is kind of an implication of what reality are you seeing. And when you think that your well-being is coming from an outside-in source, whether that be money, your kids well-behaving, you name it. In other words, I'll be happy when type scenario. If it's coming from an outside in, there's implications on what your reality is actually going to manifest. And if you think that your life is an outside in, then, excuse me, when you have problems and issues and you think that you need to solve those problems and issues, because that's the source of your well-being, is if I can just fix those issues, it's kind of like playing a game of whack-a-mole. You have the problem pop up. Oh, my husband's grumpy. Smack that with the mallet. Now, don't go smacking your husband with a mallet. That's probably not a good idea. But, follow the analogy. But it is a matter of just thinking that you have to take care of all those issues and problems that keep popping up in your life. And if you think those are the sources of your well-being, the stress, the frustration of those situations coming up can actually drive you pretty nuts. Well, at least that's been my experience in my life. When I kind of realized that outside circumstances, the outside world has nothing to do with my well-being, who I am as a human being, that's innate. Now, I still have the whack-a-mole problems. I still have issues that pop up. I still have things that I need to take care of. I still have a mortgage I need to pay. I still have cars that break down. I still have interaction with business people that I need to deal with. But there's a beautiful place when I know that no matter what the circumstances that I'm dealing with, whatever reality I'm in, when I come from it through a sense of well-being, and a sense of understanding that the outside circumstance isn't going to take away from my well-being, I'm able to handle the, quote, issues and the problems with a little bit of common sense and wisdom and in a relaxed state. At least that's been my experience. I don't know, does this make any sense to you? Again, it's tricky to do this because the only way that I know that you're even there and listening, if it makes sense, if you maybe send some little like emojis or something like that, whether you're on live or whether you're going to listen to this tape, give me some feedback on whether or not this resonates. But I found that the beauty of this understanding of knowing that it's an inside-out world, not an outside-in. And that my reality is based on my thoughts. The principle of thought creates my reality. And when I know that my reality and my behavior is actually tied to my thoughts and my feelings, and all my behavior is just me doing the best thing that I know how to do to have that sense of well-being. And if I believe that well-being is coming from within me, I have kind of a creative power to be able to take care of the things that come up. You know, and so it may sound a little weird, but it literally is showing up and responding to what shows up, rather than reacting to all those things that are issues. Because like I said, if you think that your outside issues, your work is giving you stress, your spouse is giving you stress, your kids are giving you stress, and if they don't behave right, I'm not going to have a sense of well-being because it's an outside in. It's just, again, you're whacking the mole. You're just trying to figure things out, spinning your wheels. You're going to be in a blaming mode. But when you realize that, gosh, it actually comes from within. Comes from within. And I don't have to do anything for my well-being because it's an innate quality that I have. There's just a certain amount of peace. In my classes I've been teaching, I've seen a lot of people have very much feeling frustration, but the beauty of it is that their peace seems to calm down. And they have insights that come up through their own common sense and their wisdom on what they need to do to take care of the issues. And when you really realize that all behavior comes down to that ability to, or that desire to have your own well-being, it makes a lot of sense. Kind of giving an analogy that I gave in my class yesterday is, if you think your well-being comes from outside sources, you're going to rely on outside sources to give you your well-being. So if our desire is to have well-being because it is innate, and we're feeling a little bit frustrated, we're feeling a little bit low, we're feeling tense, our brain's going to kick in going, okay, I need to get back to my well-being. What do I need to do? And it's going to go back into your reality of your past experience and go, what was it that gave me well-being? How can I get this? And it may pop in your little mind saying, ooh, chocolate cake. Oh, that chocolate cake. I remember eating that, and that chocolate cake was great. And since you think well-being comes from outside of you, you may take that chocolate cake and you will have a sense of feeling of well-being, because what does that chocolate cake do? Well, the chocolate cake interrupts your thinking pattern, because there are certain neural pathways, there are certain tastes that will influence the mind. But the correlation between, ooh, I felt better because of the chocolate cake, that's the illusion. You felt better because the taste, the senses distracted your thinking. And your thinking changed because of the distraction. So the real change of your behavior, your mood, wasn't the chocolate cake, but it was the thinking, the power of thought. That's why people who drink for a well-being, is that the actual chemical reaction that causes the drinking actually just slows the thinking down. And it gives it a fake, natural progression. So, because when you normally just relax and know the principle of thought, that thoughts get to change no matter what you do. It's just get to change. And then when you're feeling upset, like we talked about last few lessons, that feelings are just an indicator of where your thinking is in the moment. It doesn't tell you about anything other than thought in the moment. It's kind of like when you're driving a car and you see that check engine light come on. Well, the check engine light's just telling you that there's something you need to check out in your car. And if you continue to ignore it, and it's something that's bad, you might be stranded at the edge of the road. Same kind of thing with the feelings. When you think your feelings are telling you other than where your thinking is in the moment, you might find yourself doing stupid things to try to change your feelings, rather than just accepting and recognizing that it's just thought in the moment. See, one of my ideas that I remember I used to have in this concept of understanding my well-being is that I used to believe that my well-being would come when there was a time that I could control my thinking, I could feel really happy and grateful and have positive feelings all the time. But reality is that we can't. We don't. We're not designed to do that. We are designed to just deal with reality, what's in front of us in the moment. And the best way to really be able to deal with things that are in the moment is to realize that your well-being isn't dependent upon what's happening to you in the moment. You know, sometimes when I talk about this, people go, well, no, there's things out there that I've got to take care of. You know, I've got bills I got to pay. And, you know, my well-being is whether or not I can, quote, pay those bills. Well, there's a truth to that. There are things that you need to do in this life. There are how-tos. However, when you realize that those how-tos have nothing to do with your, quote, well-being, you can approach it with a clear mind and with inspiration and common sense and wisdom just to deal with what is showing up. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but you know, it's kind of like the analogy of, you know, during the crash, we had a lot of people that went through foreclosures. And the people who thought that their well-being, you know, came from the fact that they had to have a house really suffered a lot more. The ones that just were able to say, you know, that's just a bump in the road. It's just something that we need to deal with. They were actually able to deal with it with a little bit more ease. And that's what I found in my own life, that the more I think my well-being comes from outside in, and the more I have to control that outside circumstance for my well-being, the more frustration, the more anger, and the more angst that I feel. The more that I understand that my well-being comes from within, that I'm already happy. I already have a wonderful life. And I'm just going to add things to my wonderful life. It actually allows me to just deal with what's in front of me. Take care of what is in front of me right here in the moment. And it just seems to make life so much easier. And the beautiful thing of knowing that my reality comes from my thought, and that my reality is different than your reality, it also allows me to have a little more compassion and curiosity about the other person, and where their reality is, and where their well-being is coming from. And when I understand their well-being, and if they think their well-being is coming from the outside in, there's a certain amount of compassion that I've learned that I've had. with my father, when I understood that his drinking wasn't a moral flaw, it wasn't a disease, it was just his best attempt to get back to his sense of well-being. And he just had a misunderstanding where that well-being came from. There was a certain time that I just was able to release any of that, quote, frustration that I had. So there was a time I thought that, because I was a, quote, child of an alcoholic, it was a determination of what was going to happen in my life as something, an issue that I was going to have to deal with. And there's a big difference between influencing and determining. Now, I don't know all of the ins and outs of how things influence your well-being, but I do know that they do not determine your well-being. It doesn't matter what happens on the outside world. Outside circumstances cannot take away your inner well-being. Even when you are physically damaged by something, it still cannot take away your well-being. But if you know that your well-being comes from within, when that physical stuff happens, you are able to make adjustments to the physicality of it and do it with a little grace. Do it with a little love and understanding rather than being a victim and blaming. Again, I hope this is making sense to you. I really have a passion about this because I've seen many different lives change because of this understanding. I've seen people who have moved away from suicide because they understood where their well-being comes from. And I've seen people who have just, just had a greater sense of peace no matter what the circumstance is. And that's what I'd love to have with you. So please share this with your friends. And if you want to have a conversation with me, go ahead. On my page, the fan page of Mindset of Happiness and Joy, click up over there on the email. Email me a little note, and let's start the conversation. It's some great information. It's a wonderful time to be alive because we can start really seeing the fundamental principles behind what it is to be a human being. All righty. Thanks a lot for your attention, and until next week, I will see you later. Love you lots. This is Derek saying goodbye. See ya.